Hello, Internet. If you see any person who is an exact double of you, kill them immediately. This is a warning. Your doubles are evil, I assure you, unless you are the evil one, and then I don't know what to tell you. Um, Hello, I'm Nathan. Welcome to Ignore the Bell.
And I'm Tyler. And
Uh,
today we are talking about Jordan Peele's second film,
yep,
uh, Us.
that's right. His second film is not Us. It's the movie Us with quotation marks around it.
Yes, I know it is very confusing to talk about this film.
Yeah, it's a bit of a clumsy title. It's a good title. It's just it's clumsy to actually use.
Yeah.
So we don't have a sponsor for today's episode, but we do have a public service announcement. Okay,
Okay. Yeah.
so a public service announcement. If you are dating a twin, you've got to know that one of them is evil. Choose wisely. That is all.
Yeah, so you don't have to kill the other, but
You don't
just
have to
pick
kill the other
one.
one. Just don't marry the other one. And don't ever
Right.
get them mixed up.
Right.
Because
Yes.
yeah. All right. So we are going to be talking about the movie Us, and we're going to get into a pretty thorough analysis of the film and discussion of it. There will be spoilers pretty quickly into this. I think like we'll give
Yeah,
them a few minutes in without spoilers, and then we'll make
sure.
it very obvious that we are then going to start talking about all that spoiled stuff in
Right.
the middle
Yeah.
and end. All right,
Sounds
folks. I
good.
hope you enjoy.
Oh man, I wish this discussion could go on forever.
Ignore the bell. We're gonna keep going, people.
All right, so we are talking about the movie Us, Jordan Peele's second film. So his first one, of course, is Get Out, and if you have not already done so, Tyler and I, we did a podcast. We posted it just a few days ago, and that was on Get Out, and we got into that film. I don't know how long we talked for, but it was a while.
Yeah, I think it was probably close to an hour and a half.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
Yeah.
So about as long as the movie. That's how much
Right.
appreciation we got out of that. And so
Yes.
we
And
really
we
got
and we
into.
were really just scratching the surface.
I
Like
know
there's
there was
so
so
much to
much more
talk
there.
about.
Even after we finished, I'm like, I have so much more to say, so much more to think through with this film. And
Yeah.
Us, I really is I've got so much to say. And I only just saw it. You and I both we just came from the theater, and so
Absolutely. I walked in the door, I guess about 20 minutes ago.
yeah, same thing with me.
Yeah.
So this is going to be pretty fresh. We haven't had a lot of time to think through these ideas, but I've still got a fair bit that I've already been working on and developing.
Yeah. I've been thinking through some things on the way home as well. Right off the bat, I want to say this is a really good film.
Yeah. Oh, right. I'm not good at that. The whole review part. This is an excellent, excellent movie. Uh, Especially if you like horror, then you're going to enjoy the film. And if you like horror that opens up interpretive possibilities,
Mhm.
where it feels like it is much more than just the literal story, then I think you're going to enjoy the film. But you don't have to like films that always do that or only do that. You can appreciate it just on the surface level in terms of plot and dialogue and action and characters and all of that.
Yeah, it definitely has some really thrilling moments in it and yeah, just really awesome visuals and
Yes.
basically no jump scares, which is
I
really
know.
nice.
Right. I know. I thought so too. I was like, oh, this is so great that it is
Yeah,
a horror film that isn't cheap.
right. Yeah.
Right? I mean, I'm just going to say this. Basically, here's the thing. You can go on a date with a woman who's dolled up like she is a hoochie mama. And if you are on a date with a woman who's dolled up like a hoochie mama, you enjoy movies with jump scares. And to contrast that, you could go on a date with a woman who is, very classy and elegant and refined and all of that. And it's like, ooh, there's something a little bit more sophisticated there that, it's not like Homer's like shotgun on The Simpsons, where he's got it set to horror with like the makeup thing.
Right.
Right? That's jump scares as far as I'm concerned. It's like, stop. Just
Yeah.
stop. It's
Yeah.
so cheap.
Right. Yeah. And I don't remember a single jump scare in this film.
No.
It was
And
so good.
but
It's
I think that it worked so well in part because he's playing off of the fact that so many directors have just exploited jump scares that he sets you up for a jump scare and then it's not there. And so you're
yeah.
like,
Yeah.
oh,
Yeah. You never get that uh relief moment of
no.
like, oh, there's not going to be a jump
Exactly.
scare. Yeah.
Exactly. And that's why I think that it's actually a better way of making horror is that there is no relief. That
Yeah.
it's not like boom and now it's there and then it turns into an action movie, right?
Right.
That's my issue with horror that relies on jump scares is that you get all of this dread and anticipation of that monster is going to jump out, but then once it's out, then it just turns into an action sequence and then there's no more sense of dread. There's no more terror. But
Mhm.
instead, this kind of lingers and it creeps and it you know,
Yeah.
I mean, I do have a little bit of criticism of the film
Mhm.
in terms of this. I don't know. Okay, I guess before we get to that, let me just like very briefly. So this obviously just came out in 2019. Jordan Peele's second film. It is. Do you want to give like a brief plot description?
Sure. So, a family of four is visiting a beach house, I guess for a weekend. I don't.
They own it.
Oh,
They own
they
it.
own it. Okay, yeah. But anyway, they're there, and then the first night that they're there, some people are standing at the end of their driveway, and it's them.
Right.
And I mean, honestly, I don't really want to say much more than that without
Yeah.
getting like fully
Sure.
into spoilers, because that
Okay.
is, I would say a pretty good introduction at the very least.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I agree. And so yeah, so we're still not going to be talking about like we won't get into spoilers yet. But my little bit of criticism with the film is that you don't. So it's great that you don't have these jump scares. You do have these attempts at comedy though
Yeah.
that seem intended to relieve tension, but I think you've got quite a few failed attempts.
Yeah. I mean, there was definitely quite a bit of, you know, chuckling in the theater, but not, like not a lot of like full, laughter moments. And even with the moments where you got the audience to chuckle, then it's still it's difficult because with Get Out, I think that it works better with the, I don't know. I just found with this film, then it's like it feels like it should be more serious in tone throughout, and the comedy felt misplaced.
Yeah, the
You know?
comedy did feel misplaced and it didn't actually achieve its goal, I think. And the goal I think was to
Hmm.
relieve tension and it's like but it didn't relieve tension.
Right, because you're still
Because
kind of
you're
tense,
yeah,
and it's then you're not even laughing at the
right.
comedy. You're just, oh, that was a funny moment. I guess I'm supposed to relax, maybe.
Right. But it's
Yeah.
yeah, there's definitely moments of this where you get what seems like it's supposed to be a joke, but then the tone of the film isn't really shifting. And so,
Yeah.
for example, you've still got that oh so classic, what a great throwback to 1980s, 1970s horror movie music, right?
Right.
Where
Yeah.
you've got, basically a symphony with creepy children singing some weird language, whether it's Latin or something like that. You've got that going on.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
it's
I have thoughts on that, but yeah.
yeah, yeah. I mean, me too. I mean, I guess like really all that I'm trying to say with that is that that is a film that is taking itself seriously. That
Right. Yeah.
it's not like a teen horror. Let's play like trendy music right now. It's trying to use. It is using a score that like at parts of the film the opening title sequence uses this music, and then you get little moments of this music throughout the film where it comes back in, and that's not a film that is you know typically resorting to comedy, right? Like I'm talking about like something like, like a great example would be something like The Omen, right? The Omen isn't like, oh, okay, this kid's the Antichrist and he's going to take over the world, and then it's like, oh, but there's a hilarious joke to kind of ease the tension of all of this. It's like The Omen's taking itself very seriously, and I feel like there was just a little bit of conflict there.
Yeah, I would agree. Yeah, I mean, basically, yeah, like the tone does feel a little uneven in this film, and that was difficult for me watching the film because I did kind of feel like this isn't quite what I want out of this film. Do you know what I mean? Like I wanted it to be more serious and not have those comedic moments, but yeah, otherwise, like I really did really enjoy this film, and it it's very well made.
Yeah, it's so well made, and you just like in Get Out, you get some beautiful camera work. You get long takes. You have tracking shots, and I'll point this out just in case I forget to mention it later. This is very much a film in terms of the camera work, the cinematography, and the way things are being framed. It is very reminiscent of Stanley Kubrick, right?
Mm,
And I mean, like he's got the Kubrick shot multiple times in the film. The Kubrick shot, there's a couple. There's one, tracking somebody from behind, like you get in the Shining, where you've got Danny walking like or rolling his like tricycle down the hallway of the Overlook
right.
Hotel, and then the tracking shot behind him as he's going down the hallway, and you're knowing like, oh, those little like creepy twin girls might show up at any point. You get that for sure in this film, but then you also get and again, we're still trying not to get into spoilers, but you do have a character who does this,
Mm,
right?
yeah,
This is in almost every Kubrick movie.
right. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's
for
in
sure.
multiple ones. It's definitely in The Shining. It's in Full Metal Jacket. I'm trying to think of
A
others, but I know I've
Clockwork
seen it.
Orange.
Yeah, Clockwork Orange as well. Yeah, you absolutely get that in Clockwork Orange, right? Like
It's
that's like
like the
that long.
cover art, so
Yeah, and that's a
yeah.
long tracking shot that you get towards the protagonist. I forget his name, but yeah, you get that. You
Mm,
get that. So that's what I'm saying is that if you're trying to if this is a Kubrick inspired film, or at least in the style of Kubrick,
right.
then the comedy, like Kubrick doesn't really have these comedic breaks.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
But it's a
Um,
beautifully shot film, is all that I'm really trying to say with that.
yeah, absolutely. I agree entirely. Yeah, so I guess do you want to sorry, get into spoilers then?
Yeah, because I can't. Because yeah, that's not what our podcast is. We are getting into this
Yeah.
movie. If you don't want to know the plot, then stop watching, or
Yeah,
I
I
don't
would
know.
really encourage people to go see this film.
Oh
It
yeah,
is really, really good. Yeah, go see it.
yeah. Um, okay, so I think that I don't know. Do you want to say your thoughts first, or do you want me to get right into this?
No, I'll try to give my brief thoughts. I'm sure that you're going to have more than me. But yeah, no, there's a lot to pull apart here. The first thing I want to get out of the way with is um the main character is actually, this is full spoiler, is actually originally from underground along with all these other people, right? Like that's the
Yes,
that that's
there
what
was
the film.
the great reversal.
Yes. Yeah. Now, I personally, I don't want to say that like I fully saw it coming, but it wasn't that much of a what moment for me. Like I
Mm,
was very much like, yeah, I get it. That
mm,
I kind of considered that as a possibility, and I
mm,
didn't see anything outright disproving it. So I had that idea in my head like throughout the film. So it wasn't, I think that that's a good moment to leave the film on of like, oh, this whole time then you've actually been following the underground version. But it wasn't, it didn't have that same effect for me. Um,
Right. Yeah, it might not have that surprise, that punch, but it's
yeah.
very appropriate, is it not?
Oh,
That
absolutely.
that's how this
Yeah,
film has to
100%.
end.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, the way that he wrote this is fantastic with, you know, with these characters from underground, apparently trying to take over the surface world, and then you find
Uh-huh.
out that one of them has already done it and and has been existing above ground for, whatever, 30 years.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, I mean, I've
It's
got
perfect.
oh yeah, it's so perfect. It's terrific. And the way Jordan Peele, I love seeing it at the beginning too, where it's, written, produced, and directed by Jordan Peele. I'm just like,
Absolutely.
oh, the dude is living the dream right now. That's incredible to be able to get that, right?
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, I know so often then people will just resort to a film by,
yeah.
but it was really
No,
cool to see.
you gotta list it off. You got yeah. So when I'm saying he, that I'm talking about, of course, about Jordan Peele. So
Yeah.
the way he um slowly reveals little bit by little bit more and more about what happens to her when she is a girl in what is it, Merlin's Enchanted Forest or something like that.
Originally it was Shaman's Find Yourself,
Oh, okay.
but then later, of course, due to political correctness, then it was changed to Merlin's Enchanted Forest or something.
Okay.
Find Yourself. Uh, but yeah, that's yeah, I did love that. I mean, I am, a huge amusement park nerd. So even during like the opening sequence that I was going like, huh, let me see, where could this be? Is this Santa Cruz? I think this is Santa Cruz.
Wow, you actually can recognize that?
Yeah. I mean, I didn't like really recognize it, but I was like, it feels like that probably is what it is. Like I recognized it based on not how it actually looks, but based on like, oh yeah, it's on a beach and it's got, this roller coaster fair type of feel. And yeah.
Well, I mean, like, I guess I just figured like there's so many possibilities of what it could be, but you
Yeah.
know,
No, I don't know.
no,
I
you're
don't.
good at this. I know that you are. That like you can do that because your knowledge of amusement parks and theme parks is pretty close to encyclopedic at this point.
Thank you.
Yeah, no, I mean like yeah, it's your thing, it's your hobby, it's your interest. So I'm saying like you're
Yeah.
doing what you're striving to do.
Yeah, yeah. No, so I did really oh man, I love that sequence of because you're seeing everything from her perspective, right? From the girl's perspective as she's walking through the amusement park, and you get these lingering shots on things that you're not really sure why we're
Hmm.
paying attention to them.
Hmm.
Like the couple like feeding each other food,
Yep.
and like, okay, yeah, there's the roller coaster, and there's the
Yes.
the Himalaya ride and whatever. You're getting all those shots and you're like, it feels kind of odd that he's putting so much focus on these scenes, and then the way that it comes back at the end with seeing how the underground people, I don't know what else to call
I
them.
think that's a fine enough term. Yeah.
Okay, yeah, the underground people are you know doubling that experience, trying to live out that experience, even though they're just in hallways and rooms, like classrooms or whatever. Like, it,
Yes.
it's fascinating and like feeding each other, like the rabbit, and then you're going, ugh.
Yep.
Yeah, yeah. So that is brilliant, and I think that is, yeah, just fantastic because he shows it at the beginning.
Right. Yes, it's that every shot in the film is intentional. I mean, like I haven't worked through every single shot, but it sure feels that way. Every one that I've thought about that I'm going, yes, there was intent, there was purpose behind that, and that it ties into what happens later on. And you get that, like David Lynch is another director who does that. David Lynch will have this fascination with things, and the camera will focus on these things, and you find yourself when you're watching a David Lynch film, or if you're watching Twin Peaks, then you lean in, right? And you're like,
right.
what is so interesting about that? Because you're interested in that. So why are you interested? And you want to know. You don't just go like, they forgot to turn off the camera. Like, it just
Right.
lingered, or it's like, oh, I guess their editor was really bad. Like that's the thing, is like when you're dealing with an actual like a director who is very, very skilled, then you can trust that he knows what he's doing, or she knows what she's doing, and that you don't just think, am I looking at incompetent filmmaking? You just trust, no, 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 this is competent. There's a reason behind this, and it will
Right.
be satisfying. It will pay off.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny you mentioned that. Earlier today on TV, then I was watching Star Trek: The Motion Picture,
Mm.
and it has a lot of lingering shots that have no purpose whatsoever.
Right. That's what I'm saying. That's what's so frustrating. It's like it's the same thing in writing. If you're dealing with, an author who's just a hack, and is just an amateur and is not very good, then you're just like, oh, that was really strange. Why did that happen? And then it's just like, oh, it's just because they're a moron. It's not because, it's like you get that on The Office with Michael Scott, or like with Threat Level Midnight, that it's like, that I think like Dwight's trying to defend it. It's like, oh, maybe it meant this. It's like, no, I'm just an idiot. Like I just made a mistake,
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
And yeah. But when you know that you're in the hands of somebody who's competent and skilled, then there's a certain amount of, you can kind of relax and just trust that this is time well spent, and that the
Yes.
more you think on this, the more you're going to get out of it.
Yeah. Get out.
That's a good feeling. Yeah, I know there's a little bit of a reference there.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, even with the shot during the credits, where you're looking at, this rabbit in a cage,
Sure.
and you're going, why am I looking at a rabbit? What does this have to do with anything? But
Right.
you are, thinking like, okay, this is going to come back somehow.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and it zooms out, and I love how initially you're seeing a lot of white rabbits, and then there's one uh darker rabbit, like a
There is.
brown.
It's brown.
uh,
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, there are eventually more.
Yeah.
uh
Other colors. You see black rabbits and other
yeah,
shades of brown, and ones that are kind of
yeah,
spotted and mottled, and yeah.
yeah, but I love that idea, because I feel like that really does again tie into the end of the film, where you're looking at, okay, there's one, of these creatures who's contained and locked in, right? So like the one family, all the doubles of the one family. Then you're
Mm-hmm.
like, oh, there are more of them, and they
Mm-hmm.
all look alike. Then you're
Mm-hmm.
seeing, oh, there's one that stands out, that's different, that's,
Mm-hmm.
like it really does grab your eye when you first see it. You're like,
Yeah, it
why is that
does.
one there?
Yeah.
And then you keep zooming out, and then it's almost like it's spreading, like it's like,
Yeah.
oh, and now there are
Oh,
here.
yeah. That's an interesting way of looking at it. Hmm. Hmm.
Yeah, that was I mean, I didn't think that while I was watching the film, but it's like as we're,
Yeah.
talking about this, and as I was thinking through it, then I'm like, yeah, that actually, I feel like that must have been what he was trying to do with that. Because he is able to do these things, and I believe
Yeah.
that he would do that. So
Right.
yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Outside of that, I feel like I need more context on the Holding Hands Across America. I know that it's a thing,
Yeah.
but I'm not, terribly knowledgeable about what it was exactly.
Yeah.
Um, I don't know if you can, help out with that.
Sure. Yeah. And I think because it's going to come up in my analysis of the film.
Mhm.
So maybe we can kind of circle back to this.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah. That's fine.
Okay.
Yeah. But yeah, outside of that, I mean, there, I love the reveal that there are, more of these doubles out there. Because as far as I know, none of the trailers or commercials or anything show anything about that. This film was marketed
It
perfectly.
was so well done, and I know that was one of the criticisms of the way the marketing behind Get Out is that the trailer revealed too much. But this, it doesn't reveal too much. It has got an excellent trailer, and yeah, and he did such a good job of setting up this this terrible family, right? Like
Yes.
their family friends, right? Like they're just despicable people, and like they're really gross. And so then like I literally was just grinning like from ear to ear when like the people in the red suits, like the twins jump out and just like brah, and I'm like, huh, huh, there's more of them. And then you're just like, this is global. This is a pandemic. This is like the
Right.
zombie apocalypse, except with twins in red jumpsuits, you know? I was just
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
yes, this movie is so much more than I thought it would be. It was great.
Yeah.
And I love that I didn't know that. So if you've not seen the
Yeah.
movie yet and I just told you that, like, that's what you get. We told you there were spoilers.
Yes. Yeah, no, it really is done so well because of course you see when the main family leaves their house on the boat.
Yep.
And here's the thing. The first act of this film, most directors would say that's the first film. That's the first
Yeah.
film, you
Yeah.
know? It's like, yeah, we're fighting our doubles, and then at the
Yep.
end they kind of get away, on a boat, and it's like, yeah, they'll find help somewhere.
Totally. Yeah.
The second act really like opens this up as
Yep.
like, oh, this is a much bigger story that's not even close to being done.
Yeah.
Uh, I mean, I don't know if it's exactly like the first act or if it's the first half, but either way, um, yeah. And then so when they leave their underground family there, then you see at least the daughter run off. So it looks like, oh, she's going to meet them, wherever they end up docking the boat.
Mm.
So when you're seeing the other family, then that's at least what I was thinking. I was thinking like, okay, when are the underground
Yes.
people gonna appear?
Oh,
And it
yeah.
was, oh, it's not those underground
Right.
people.
Right.
It's other.
And that entire sequence was just that was, I think, maybe the most fun of the entire film because you get this amazing contrast between the music with Good Vibrations by the Beach Boys while these people are massacring these terrible human beings, right?
Yeah,
And then,
absolutely.
and then like she's desperate to call the police, and then like you get the F the police coming straight out the underground when that comes on.
I know.
It's
It's so
amazing.
good.
It's so good. Yeah, because it's just like they're fun songs, and you've already established that these are terrible people, like they're despicable
Right.
people, and then you're like, and this movie is so much bigger than what you thought it was,
Yeah.
that it's one of those moments where it's just like, wow, that felt great, as a viewer. Like it's such a fun moment.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, the other thing that was great about that moment was, the evil twins come out and
Mhm.
just outright murder
Oh
the
yeah.
regular twins, and you just go, oh, okay, this is like a serious issue then, because
Right.
before that, then you're not really sure if that's what these underground people are trying to do,
I
like,
know. You don't even know that that's exactly what they want to do. And it was so
yeah,
great because I'm just like, oh, don't make me sit through another scene where you've got, one of these underground people who's trying to speak and is like working through all of this with this terrible family. I'm like, have no sympathy on them. Just get right to it.
right, yeah.
Yeah, but no, I mean, because all kinds of things are clicking into place as you're watching that. Then you're going, oh, wait. So it's not just them. So then it's like how many are getting out, and this is happening all over. That there's going to be no help because you're wondering why don't the police show up? You know, when they initially say they're going to be here in 14 minutes, and then you're like, well, it's been more than 14 minutes. So where are they? And it's not until then that you really start realizing, you're like, oh, this is way bigger than what we initially thought.
Yeah, yeah, and the TV broadcast, oh, that's so amazing. You know,
Yeah.
you just see like all these people like holding hands, and I mean, I made the connection instantly. I was like, that's
Right.
Hands Across America,
Right.
and I didn't
Yeah.
know exactly what it was, but I was like, oh my goodness, that why are they doing that?
Yeah, and well, because like he did visually
It
cue that.
automatically, yeah, like it automatically went though uh from a question of what are they doing to why are they doing it.
Right. Right.
And that I think is the great turn because you spend the first, you know, half or so of the film wondering like what are these people doing? Not so much why are they doing this, but just, you know, what are they going to do? Why are they, you know, attacking? And then you get that turn, and then you start asking, okay, really, why are they doing this then? Because all
Yeah.
they're doing is holding hands. And
Yeah, and it's I mean, I've got a theory about it. But in terms of like but my theory is definitely getting into the allegorical. And so the literal reason behind it, it is unclear. It's basically you've got the dad in the film who calls it, you know, some kind of weird performance art, right? And I think
right.
like that's basically what it is.
Yeah, yeah, it really is because you know it was the the main character's double, Red, I think her name is. Then she, you know, says like, you know, we had to do this show to show that, oh my goodness, it's already been a half
That's
hour.
nuts. I can't believe we've already been talking for 30 minutes.
Um, but yeah, so it's um, so she does say, you know, like it had to be a show on a large scale in order
Yeah.
to, you know, let people know that we are here. And it was
Yes.
like, okay, so that is kind of what it was. And yeah, I mean, you get all these questions about, you know, like she says, like, you know, do they have a soul? You know, like they were able to reproduce the bodies, but not the soul. So but it's like, but I don't know, is there a soul in that being? Because I struggle with that. It's
Yeah, I think the explanation was essentially that they shared a soul,
right, yeah,
right? That's the tethering that you get.
yeah,
That the
yeah, that's
bodies they were able to duplicate, but they weren't able to duplicate the soul. So then it's split between the two, and that you get that tethering. And so that's how come you
right.
get this mimicking behavior amongst the one group from the other one.
Yeah, 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 you're absolutely right. Yeah, they did kind of explain that. Um, but yeah, no, this film is it's really really so good. It's so much
Yeah.
fun to watch and you know this is incredible just you know being able to talk about the film because I feel like that's what this film is for. It
Yeah.
is for discussing.
Yes.
Um, yeah, and I mean, you get, you know, a lot of really awesome sequences, like you said, you know, like when this terrible family is being murdered during
Yeah.
the Beach Boys' "Good Vibrations" playing,
Yeah.
and then I don't I don't know if you picked up on this, but of course, you know, it's the white family, and then they've got the Beach Boys playing,
That's right.
and then as soon as the black family gets there, then it
NWA comes on.
switches, yeah, to NWA. And yeah, oh man, it's so fun, so fun.
Yeah, it's so fun. It's terrific.
Yeah.
Um, do you have more?
You know what? I'm good for now. I mean, I have other
Yeah.
little thoughts, but I'm good for now.
Okay. So get ready. All right. Because I watched this and I'm like, I'm like, oh, I'm not gonna have anything to say. I'm not gonna have anything to say. And then at the end, I went, oh, I know what it's all about. So to me, uh, And by the way, I have not read anything about this film. Like I went in totally blind and we're talking like immediately after. So I'm still working through these issues and I am so hoping that I am going to be the first one to this analysis and
Yeah.
that it'll be posted on YouTube and then people can point to it and then say, like, there, that's the first time we
Yes.
heard it.
Sorry. First and foremost, Jeremiah 11:11.
Uh-huh.
Uh, it, do you know what that verse is, and does it come into your theory?
Yeah.
Okay.
Um, I mean, it does to some degree, but I'll read it out
Yeah,
after.
yeah, yeah.
Um,
I just wanted to, because I was gonna forget that otherwise, but
yeah.
yeah.
So I've spent a fair bit of time analyzing horror, the horror genre, in a formal way. I mean, so my master's degree, what I wrote my master's research paper on is The Walking Dead comics and the television show. And so this is obviously you know this, but I'm saying for anybody who's watching.
Yeah.
And uh, I really was working through how the Walking Dead comics can be read allegorically as expressing uh, subconscious fears amongst contemporary Americans about issues surrounding illegal immigration, and essentially that the zombies are functioning uh, as stand-ins, metaphorical stand-ins or allegorical stand-ins for illegal immigrants who are coming across the border. Because if you're looking in the comics, there's all these like visual cues to the southwest, the hordes of people who are coming across, the inability of barriers to stop them, and that fences alone won't work. If you have no barriers, you're doomed. Just fences alone won't work. You need to have a big, strong wall, build the wall. You need to have all of that in order to stay safe. That's
Mhm.
and that there's a certain logic involved in that. And so, uh, good horror to me opens up interpretive possibilities. So when you watch it or when you read good horror, horror is on the one hand, it's functioning on a literal level of literally what happens within the film, just on a plot level, just with characters and with, very overt themes. But then there's all of the subtext that comes out of this. And to me, the more subtext there is and the more possibilities there are for interpretation, the better the horror film actually is. Because I watch horror not
Mhm.
to be scared. I watch it typically for all of the, for lack of a better word, social commentary and allegorical readings that
Mhm.
can come out of it. Because it's easier to express these things in allegorical format where you can reduce it to its most elemental nature, where you're following a select group of characters rather than trying to, how do you dramatize something that's happening amongst millions and millions and millions of people? How do you dramatize that? Well, it's like we can't. So you have to then reduce it and make it, in some ways, a simpler story to get to all the complexities of what's going on this big scale. And
Yeah.
I think that that's what Us is doing. So we talked before with Get Out, where Get Out, I think, in many ways, while it is focusing on one level, it's focusing on race relations within the United States, and it's commenting on this to some degree, but it's also very concerned with wealth inequality, right?
Mhm. Yeah.
And this film, Us, is so focused on wealth inequality, and it is fascinating what comes out of that.
Mhm.
And so if you're looking at this, then basically, uh, okay, watch what I mean. When the shadow version of, I think her name is Adelaide, so, and then the shadow version is Red, when she comes up and she starts speaking and she starts explaining this um, uh, inverse relationship, that it's like a reciprocal, right? That it's
Mhm.
happening to her, but it's happening in a polar negative version of it, right? That,
Right.
so, you eat a hot, warm meal, I eat cold rabbit, like
Mhm.
raw, cold rabbit. You get these toys for Christmas, these nice, like, toys and wrapped in these beautiful presents. Mine are cold and sharp and they cut me. Okay. At Christmas time, you've got all these people in North America who are opening up their presents, right? oh, this is great. This is so wonderful. They're opening up all this stuff that they really don't need, but they're opening it up and makes them feel good that they've got all this stuff, right? And then they hold it in their hands. Yay, this is wonderful. And then there is no consideration of where that came from, the hands
Right.
that made that. And if you look at that, these products came from China, they came from other developing nations, and the people who made them, they're dealing with cold, sharp instruments to deal to make this, with the
Right.
machinery, with the equipment. They're cutting their hands in order for you to have that thing that you cherish. And you're like, this is so great. I love this so much. Made in China. You are so far removed from where that thing actually came from that it's just, this is really about wealth inequality. And that the film is working through this in really interesting ways that on the one hand, it seems to be expressing this, that because you see this happening within the film where you've got the husband, I forget what his name is, Adelaide's husband, Gabe Wilson, where he is so concerned with material possessions. And look, this family, the our protagonists in the film, they are wealthy. They're doing very
Yeah.
well. They drive a Mercedes. They have a beach house, right? And
Yeah.
then he buys a boat, but they are so privileged that, like, literally his children and his wife, they scoff at his crappy boat.
Right.
The dude buys a boat, right? And yeah, it's not a yacht, it's not a high-end boat, but the dude drives a boat and a Mercedes and they have a beach house and they're like, oh, that's garbage. Why would you want that? Right? And it's like, and why does he do that? Because he's obsessed with this wealth inequality, even within the wealthiest, most prosperous nation in the world, where he's looking at his friend and is like, his friend has got this yacht, this small little yacht that I don't know if you caught the name of his boat.
Oh yeah. The
B yacht.
yacht. That's
Yacht.
fantastic.
Yeah. Like, wow, what a terrible person, right? That,
Yeah.
you know, there's no consideration to how much this costs. Like, the family isn't like, you shouldn't have spent that money. You bought a boat. Like, it's just like,
Right.
why did you buy that crappy boat? We can't even appreciate that, right? They are such a privileged family. And then, so you've got, the people within North America. So you've got the people who are already upper middle class, but they're not upper middle class enough, where they're striving, right? They're striving to get to where these people are. And the people who are here are striving to get to where people over here are, that this constant striving. But all of this is built off of this foundation of exploiting other parts of the world and exploiting other people in the world in order to get these manufactured goods that, as you have globalization, you're going to have massive wealth inequality, except it's invisible to you. Right?
Right.
All of the consumer goods come to you and you benefit from them. But as far as how it actually got manufactured and all like this complex economic network that's going on, you don't see all the ugly parts to it. And then when the ugly parts come up, and then there's people who are resentful of this, they're resentful of the system that exists, then you're like, like, well, what did I do? What did I do? Like, why are you coming after me? Like, I'm such a victim in this. Why are you, harassing me in this way? And it's like, you don't even realize that you're complicit within this system, right?
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah,
so
I mean, it really is, literally in the film, it is a society that is built on this lower class. It's
oh, believe me,
like right on top.
I'm
Yeah,
getting there. I'm getting there.
that's
Okay.
fantastic.
So watch this. This film, even more than just being about wealth inequality on a global scale and in terms of globalization, where do all these manufactured goods come from and at what cost, right? And how we ignore the hands that actually produce this. And that we don't really appreciate what we have because we always want more, 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 right?
Mhm.
So it's dealing with all of that stuff. But this film is about colonialism. And it is so about colonialism, and it is fascinating because watch this. Colonialism basically functions like this. You've got European nations that then look at undeveloped parts of the world, right? So historically, they're looking at these undeveloped nations on Earth, and they're saying like undeveloped, as in they don't have a lot of
Mhm.
infrastructure in place. They don't have a lot of roads and bridges and railroads and all of that stuff. And then they've got tons
Right.
of natural resources that are not being mined, and they don't have big industry and all of that. So then they colonize these places, right? And through imperialism, so they set up this empire, they take over, they effectively control these nations. Now, the way colonization functioned in the 19th century, like if you're looking at the Berlin Conference when they carved up Africa, they just, like, the European leaders, they sat around, they basically just drew lines on Africa, and they're like, all right, well, you can have this, and you can have this, and we're going to have this.
Right.
Queen Victoria's like, oh, I want to, give a mountain to, I think it was like her son or her nephew or something like that. So then she's like, with Kenya, just make sure that we get Mount Kilimanjaro in there, right? That if you're looking at the borders, then like literally it goes around the mountain, because it's like, oh, give him a mountain, right? Like it's like ridiculous. And they did this all without giving any consideration to historical boundaries that existed, historical borders within Africa. And out of that, what you get out of that is that you've got people groups that are now forced together who had a border that existed before. And then you have other people groups that are now separated by a border. They didn't give any regard to a shared culture or history or language or any of these things. And then they go and they build all of the infrastructure. So they put all of this infrastructure in place. But then all of these nations, they go bankrupt effectively after World War II. So then you get decolonization because they cannot afford to support the colonies anymore. So then they pull out, okay? They pull out. And then there's chaos as a result because you've effectively been running everything. You haven't given any local control to the people groups who have been living there. So now, if you just all of a sudden abandon the places, you're going to get a certain degree of chaos that comes out of this.
Yeah,
This is exactly
you cut the head off of the chicken.
right. And this is exactly what like on a literal level, this is exactly what us is showing. You have the people up here, the colonizers of Europe, who build this thing down here. They put all the infrastructure in place. And then they abandon it because they can't accomplish their goals, right? They can't quite get what they want. So they disappear. And then what happens? It's chaos within there, right? That they've built this infrastructure and then they leave and then there's chaos. And then what ends up happening is you get this condescension amongst Westerners of looking at formerly colonized nations that have now been decolonized, and there's this condescension of, look at them, they're so uncivilized, look at this civil war that they have, look at all the poverty that they have, look at the living conditions that they have, look at what they eat, look at how close together they live, look at the clothing they're wearing. It's all this, you see what I'm saying? That's exactly what's going on within this film.
Yeah. That's really, really fascinating. Because I mean, it really is this abandoned, area. It's oh yeah, we built this thing for these people down here. We made these people down here, and then oh well, can't do anything with it. We'll just pretend like it doesn't exist. We won't help them. We won't do anything.
Right. And then worse than that, there's this revulsion towards them. There's this disgust towards them. And then you blame them for the problems that they have. And you say, well, it's your fault. And it's like, you're the one who set up all these structures. You're the one who put us in this position. And so that's very much what's happening within this film, that you've got, and that's why I think it's called Us, that on the one hand, like on a very literal level, then, the boy saying it's us, like, and it's like, well, yeah, it is you guys because it's a duplication of you. But the whole point here is that other people in the world, they're us too. It's us.
Right.
We're all human, no matter what kind of living conditions we've grown up in. And that's where you get this really interesting thing of seeing that switch that you get at the end of the film, where it turns out that the girl, Red, who is actually like being raised in this underground, and then Adelaide, who was up here, that you get this switch, and that Adelaide becomes fairly monstrous from living within this. And then
Yeah.
you get Red, who ends up becoming quite civilized and actually quite compassionate. And it shows that somebody from the underground, in the right conditions, with all those privileges, with all of those benefits that you get from living up in this level, that she ends up that it is very much about nurture, and it is not about nature. That it is
Right.
not this thing of like, oh well, these people are uncivilized, and it's like, no, it has nothing to do with them on that elemental of a level, right? Certainly
Yeah.
not on any kind of genetic level. It's all the conditions that were in place. What were they born into, and what did they how were they raised? Because then you see that with really it's Red, but Adelaide, where she's compassionate even to the people from the underground. Like when, you get the daughter who goes, flying into the tree, and that she doesn't want to see her suffer, and she doesn't want
Yeah.
to see her die. That it's like, but she's an underground person. They're supposed to be monstrous. But you
Right.
see that she's not monstrous. And it's like, that's the whole thing. If you're looking at this and you're saying, well, these different people of terrible living conditions, it's not because they choose to live this way. It's that they
Mhm.
have been just born into a very difficult place to live, with all kinds of systemic problems that exist and have existed literally for generations. Um,
Yeah.
and that out of this, they come up out of that, and they're all holding hands, right? And so this is where you get into Hands Across America. Hands Across America was this movement in the mid 80s. It was this movement to try to raise money, as best I remember. Let me just double check here. It was a benefit event and publicity campaign staged on Sunday, May 25th, 1986, in which approximately 6.5 million people held hands in a human chain for 15 minutes along a path across the contiguous United States. Many participants donated $10 to reserve their place in line. The proceeds were donated to local charities to fight hunger and homelessness and help those
Mm.
in poverty, right? And they're
Okay.
coming up
Yeah.
and they're saying, we're the ones in poverty. We're the ones who are homeless. We exist, and you have to acknowledge that we exist. This wealth
Yeah.
inequality is you think that we deserve the poverty that we're living in, but we don't. And you don't deserve the wealth that you've grown up living in. That has to do with circumstances.
Yeah.
That is so beyond that you can't take credit for being highly successful and highly sophisticated and civilized, nor can you attribute blame to us for living in impoverished conditions and eating gross food and living so close together. And you know what I mean? Like, you can't
Yeah.
attribute blame and you can't take credit, because the thing is that you are either a beneficiary or a victim of circumstance far beyond your own control. And so we're here, and you have to deal with it. And this film, I think, is pointing to this idea that as you are getting more and more people within developing nations, specifically within Asia, who are coming out of poverty, they're looking to North America, they're looking to the Western world, and they're looking at that lifestyle and saying, we want that too. And it's like
Mhm.
the strain on natural resources is going to be like, who exactly knows whether this is even going to be possible? Can everybody live the way a typical American lives, with a fair bit of property and, maybe like certainly one car, if not two cars or more per household,
Right.
having that nice bit of land, driving to work and like going off to like restaurants and shopping and vacationing and all of that stuff, grocery stores with just an abundance of food. Can every single person on the planet afford to live that way? I mean, especially when we're talking about climate change,
Mhm.
right? And
Yeah.
that as you get more and more people coming out of poverty and looking to do this, looking to have that kind of lifestyle, then it really begs the question: uh, is this feasible? And if it's not feasible, why do you deserve it and they don't?
Right. Yeah. Yeah. No, absolutely. Fantastically well said. Yeah, it is. Now that I have more context on the Hands Across America thing. And I do feel like, you know, Jordan Peele does a good job of setting it up at the beginning of the film, but there's a lot of stuff that's being set up, and so it is, you know, difficult uh to grasp every single one of those things that
Oh
he's
yeah.
putting out there.
Oh yeah, that's what I'm saying.
Um,
I haven't fully worked through all of these ideas. These are just initial reactions.
yeah, I yeah, I think that it's this film is so well done.
Yeah.
The fact that Red says, you know, like it says like, "Who are you?" and she says, "We're Americans," uh,
Uh-huh.
and I don't think that it's a coincidence that this film Us is US.
Right. That's a good point.
I mean, yes, I think that a lot of, you know, the points that you're bringing up are true on a global scale, but it is certainly about America. It is about the U.S.
Well,
and
that too, right? That it's always, and this is the thing is, I'm not saying when I say that the film is about colonization that I'm saying, and therefore it's not about these other things. It can be focused
Mhm.
on multiple things all at once, and that's what I said at the beginning is that it opens up interpretive possibilities. So the one that I
Yes.
just said, that's just one interpretive possibility. Or if you want to be like, if you want to like irritate me like crazy, you can call it a fan theory, and I will probably punch you in the face if you call what I just said a fan theory, because that to me is just like it's such a juvenile way of describing it. It's like, no, this is an interpretive possibility, and I think that I worked it through fairly
Right.
well, considering I only saw the movie about an hour ago. That it's not just a
Yes.
wacky theory that. But there's lots and lots of different theories, like theoretical possibilities that you can get from this film.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's oh man, because like my mind is currently, you know, working through a bunch of different ideas. I mean, I told you, I think before we started recording, like, oh man, I feel like maybe I need a day to like sit with this, and you were
Yeah,
like,
yeah,
"Hey,
yeah.
let's go." Um,
Right.
but yeah, so I'm, you know, obviously both of us are still working through these things. Uh, you know, one of the things that I love is that, you know, she says, okay, let's go, you know, we'll go along the Adelaide says, we'll go along the coastline and into Mexico. The
Uh-huh.
idea being that, you know, Mexico is not affected by whatever this is. Again,
Right.
it's a US issue.
Right.
But also, oh man, it's so fascinating when you know that she is an underground person, right? She is from that impoverished life. And she's saying the only way that we're gonna, you know, get out of here is if we go into that underground, you know, underdeveloped world. That's her solution is we have to get to the underdeveloped.
Yeah, that's an
So
interesting way of interpreting it. Yeah. Well, I think if you're looking at this, because you're saying that this film is very much about America and, you know, it's titled Us or US, right?
yeah,
That, I mean, the same argument that I make about colonialism and decolonization, I think that you can apply that to what's happening like within the United States. And, um,
absolutely.
you know,
Yeah.
especially if you're talking about, like it just it holds up, but just on that more of a national level of this wealth inequality that you get within the United States. Of you've got those at the top who seem to have everything, and they just continue to benefit from that, and you can see why. It's like, well, you get to actually send your kids to good private schools, you know, whereas down here, look at the kind of classroom conditions we're dealing with, right? That we're
Right.
stuck
Right.
in these terrible conditions. So then you look at it and then you say, well, the poor, it's their fault because they make bad choices in life, right? That, you know, if you just give them money, they're going to spend it on, you know, booze and smokes, right? That's like the criticism that you sometimes hear from
Yeah.
those who oppose a lot of social programs. Then they'll say, well, you can't trust those people because they're going to do this with the money. And then it's like, and they blame people who are struggling with poverty as though there are no environmental factors at play, as if there's not a whole bunch of socioeconomic conditions that have, and maybe not like conditions, but also, you know, barriers that they've been experiencing throughout their entire life,
Yeah.
and that to ever make it out of abject poverty and into respectability, or even into a fair bit of wealth, like the barriers that exist, and structural barriers that have been going on for generations, that
Yeah.
I mean, that stuff is not easily fixed. And
Right. Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, to that point, I think, this film is clearly very important to Jordan Peele, with his background as, as an African American, right? And I mean, I don't know exactly what his background was growing up, but definitely the prevalence eh, of the underappreciated, the lower class that is automatically attributed to blacks in America.
mhm.
I think that plays a key factor in his decision to tell this story. Um,
Well, it's an
yeah,
interesting thing, because if you're looking at it from that angle, then I mean, I think, because obviously if you're looking at this from a demographics perspective, then African Americans experience poverty and unemployment at
hmm,
much higher rates than, like, per capita, than what they should according to demographics, right? That they're experiencing it
right,
at a much higher rate than most, than other racial groups. And so if you're breaking it down in demographic data like that, but then I think there's also this interesting point that the film has, where you've got this very affluent African American family who seems to
yeah,
kind of have everything. And it's like, they're not a perfect family. You get the little quibbling and arguing and stuff like that, especially amongst
yeah,
the kids, and all of that. But what do you then get? You then get this doubling of them, where it's this attack against them. You don't deserve the wealth that you have,
yeah,
and we've been suffering, and you're living in this opulent lifestyle, and you've totally ignored all of us in the underground. And certainly I think you can look at it from that perspective.
yeah,
Like, if you go through that, because I'm just doing it now as I'm thinking through this, and it's like, I'm sure that is a very real thing that happens, where you get criticism amongst African Americans who are experiencing poverty, and are looking at those who are not experiencing poverty, who have become quite affluent, and then being critical of them. And at the same time, then those who have achieved a fair bit of wealth, then they can turn around and say, what's wrong with you? Like,
yeah. Yeah,
that,
I mean the fact that Gabe is like, we're not gonna go down there and live in Mexico. Like
yeah,
he's
yeah.
appalled by that idea, right? He's like,
Oh,
that's
yeah.
not a good
He's
solution.
very concerned with
Yeah.
appearances and status, and yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, and I wonder, like, so let me ask you, what what is the conclusion then of the film? Because you do have all these, people from the underground who are standing there in this hands across America gesture of basically saying, hey, we exist. You can't pretend that we don't exist. We're here. We are visible. You have to do something about it. We are, for the most part, fairly hostile to you, because we are blaming you for the circumstances. And in many cases, like, in some cases, rightfully so, but at the same time, not exactly. Because it's like, it's not exactly the people in the United States at this present moment who
Right.
put them in there, who created them, and then
Yeah.
created those conditions. So it's like, you're now trying to blame a generation who did not actually do those terrible things.
Yeah.
And then what's going to happen is this, actually, because Hands Across America was supposed to be this whole thing of like, hey man, come on, like, we're all in this together, right? We're all
Right.
human beings, and everybody has value regardless of their, achievement in life, like financially or with careers or whatever. That
Mm.
we're all in this together, and I don't really think that's the conclusion of Us.
Yeah, no, I know it is. It's interesting. There's I feel like it's to some degree it is a a Black Lives Matter sort of thing where it's uh, it's that, but it's also just in terms of representation. Obviously, that has been a huge thing in Hollywood right now,
Yeah, 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 yeah.
as well as other areas. So it's like,
Making
hey,
visible what's been invisible.
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Like we need representation. You need to see that we are here. We do have stories. We do have lives. Whether or not you want to look at them, then we are here.
But then it's such an interesting thing because what ends up happening, because you've got this girl who grew up she was initially raised in the underground, and then it's like, well, it's really her story, but she, like, so, okay, so she's black, but she's not having the experience that many black people have. So then it's
Right.
like, so is that good enough representation to show a really wealthy African American, somebody who's kind of got it made? Is that the kind of representation? Like, is that, or is that the only kind of representation that's important? Because you've got all of them, and it's like, and on the one hand, it is somewhat sympathetic towards the end, um, towards these
Yeah,
people, but they still remain pretty damn monstrous. So
that's true.
that's a troubling depiction.
That's true. I don't deny that. And I mean, as you said, like the idea that this film can be dissected and interpreted and and will continue to be
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah,
for a while,
yeah.
that then I'm introducing these ideas, and I of course have not thought through all of them fully, but yeah,
Right.
there are definitely I think that there are definitely things that are in this film related to that, but I don't know, exactly um, how to interpret them.
No,
And
me neither.
yeah,
Because I'm really not sure either what to make of all of that, and I'm particularly interested in that aspect of it. I think you are right. I think that in part, this brings up issues of representation and representation within
mhm,
Hollywood, and representation of groups that have historically been ignored or oppressed, and they have not been visible. They have not been made visible on screen. But at the same time, this film doesn't. It's see, it is about the underground people to some degree, but they remain monstrous. So what do you do with that then? Um,
well, I mean, they would have been they would have been satisfied, with that existence if they didn't have this person who is saying,
oh,
"Hey, we
thank you,
need to stand up."
thank you.
So, yeah,
Yeah. Um, okay, so this is a really really good point.
yeah.
Now, I have heard that part of the issue that you get in developing nations is that uh, their overall happiness has been their overall satisfaction with their own living conditions has declined substantially, in part with the increase in visibility of what's happening within the Western world. And
Mm,
so, so Judith has, she's, so that's my wife. She spent a fair bit of time in Africa, and she's talked about this. Like that you will, if you go to different parts of, for instance, in Central Africa, then, well, very few people have televisions. Very, very few people have televisions or anything like that. But if you go to a bar, then, you'll have a whole bunch of people who maybe can afford to have a drink or something like that, and there will be a TV on there, and they're watching American television or European
mm,
television, and they're seeing stuff on screen, and now there's a comparison. Now there's, look at the
right.
way I live, look at the way the average person in America lives or the average person in Europe lives, and it's like, what a massive disconnect that you don't actually experience envy unless you visibly are envying something. Like, you
Mm,
have to be aware of what it is that is possible, to envy
yeah.
it. Like, that if you don't ever see it and if you don't know that it exists, you're not going to want it. because you can't
Right.
even express it. You can't even imagine it. But the problem is that, so like they watch, like it's become more and more common to see, like, I mean, Judith like had pointed out that, an example of this would be like watching like something like, if you see like Sex in the City, then it's like you see these people who have got like these like lifestyles that are
Mm,
just like so beyond what even the average American can afford. And so then
yeah.
Americans, they watch shows like this, or I don't watch these shows at all, but like the Real Housewives of whatever, right? Like seeing very wealthy people, shows about wealthy people. And then it's like, well, I'm striving towards that. I want that. I want to be able to do that. You get the same thing with like Instagram and social media now, because like, I mean,
Yeah.
they've got cell phones all over the world. In a lot of
Right.
places, like where like they can't afford televisions and electricity and all of that, but there's enough infrastructure in place to allow to build cell phone towers. So then you actually do get a lot of like, there's more cell phones than there would be landlines in a lot of developing nations, because they've just kind
Mm,
of skipped over landlines altogether and they're just now into like mobile technology, which makes sense.
right.
Like, wow, that's great. You guys just skipped it. Like,
Yeah, yeah, it's sorry, just a side note here. It's funny. Sir John A. Macdonald, the high school that we went to, they, being a fairly large high school, they were one of the first ones to implement Ethernet ports throughout the school. And then, of course, a little while later, it was like, oh, we don't need to spend all this money
right,
wiring the whole school. We could just do
right.
Wi-Fi. So,
That's what I'm saying, is like there's a whole bunch of resources that we allocated towards like wiring everything, and now we're kind of like going wireless. And it's like, well, if you can just get a nation that can just skip that altogether, that's
yeah,
probably like the better way to go. Forget about
yeah,
everything in between, just fiber optic cables and cell phone towers, and like
yeah,
away you go.
yeah.
So the thing is that they're able to see this stuff, that it's not invisible to them anymore. And when I'm saying
Mm,
them, then I'm talking about generally people who are growing up in a fair bit of poverty around the world, that they get to see what wealth can look like. But the problem is, within America, people watch it and they see what wealth can look like, and they're like, I want to get that. And then you've got other
right.
people who are like down here who look at that and they're like, I want to get there. And it's like that. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, sorry. So to continue on, but then the people who are like way down here, they're looking and they want to get up to this level. But the reality is that that's not attainable for very many people, that
yeah.
is so unattainable, and that you get all kinds of unhappiness that comes out of this at people who are envying what they don't have. I mean, you look at the amount
Mm,
of depression you look that exists within the Western world. You look at the amount of substance abuse. You look at the amount of all of these things, like whether you're talking about opioid addictions or alcohol or drugs, all of this stuff that comes out of this, and mental health issues. And it's like we seem to be unhappier than ever, but we've got more wealth than we've ever had. But it's like, but it's still not enough, because like when you're dealing with social media, then it's like you're always seeing what other people have and how they've got more and they've got more and they've got more. And so you're
yeah.
always striving up, but you're never going to get there.
Right. Yeah, yeah. There's to quote Star Wars, there's always a bigger fish.
Right. Yes, exactly. And I think
Yeah.
that that's what Us is doing. That you get, what is the guy's name again? The husband, Gabe.
Gabe.
Yeah,
Yeah.
they have Gabe who's looking at his neighbor, and I mean, like I look at that and I'm just like, dude, you have a beach house, you have a Mercedes,
Right.
you have a boat. I'm like I have none of those things, right? And then,
Yeah.
but meanwhile, like I'm looking up, but meanwhile, there's people who don't have what I have, and they're like, dude, you have a full-time job, and you own your own car, and you have 3 degrees, you have like a university education, that it's like, well, I don't have that, like I envy that. And it's like,
Yeah.
if people could just be satisfied with what they have, instead of constantly looking up and then resenting or envying what other people have, because that you get one or the other. It's either, oh, I want that so badly, or you don't deserve it and you're an awful
Right.
person and I want to go after you and attack you for it, which you get definitely within political discourse today.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. Yeah, I mean, this really, as much as we can say, that this film addresses colonialism and and racism and all that. It
Wealth
it, it,
inequality.
yeah, it is a humanist film
Mm.
in that this is a story that, everyone can feel involved in,
Hmm.
like I I I I I don't think there is a single person on earth who is not looking to someone else saying, I
Exactly.
want what they want. Even,
Exactly.
Jeff Bezos, he's probably looking at somebody else.
Well, I mean, even
Yeah.
if you factor it out, then like the rich industrialists, like, Carnegie and like Rockefeller and all of them from the 19th century, that if you factor out how much they have in today's dollars, they would have been worth way more than Jeff Bezos is worth. So he's actually not the richest man in history. And then even if you go back biblically, then you're looking at Solomon, and then, like Solomon is said to be the wealthiest man who has ever lived, right? And then it's like,
Right.
well, Bezos, do you have as much as Solomon? Like, how many wives do you have? I don't think he has one at all right now.
That's right. Yeah.
Declining.
Yeah. Yeah, no, oh man, there is so much interesting stuff in this film. Man, I one thing that I really, really, really want to talk about is Adelaide's parents. Uh,
Uh-huh.
of course, they're, shaken by, their daughter not acting like their daughter
Yeah.
anymore.
Like not
Uh,
talking.
right. Yeah. And I love that Red, has trouble speaking because
Mhm.
clearly there would be no need to speak
Right.
underground, right?
Right.
Like for, the 30 years or whatever it was that she was down there,
Yeah.
even though she did know English before she went down there.
Yeah, but if you don't
That
have anyone to speak to and no way to practice the language or hear the language, then,
Yeah.
and I mean, the trauma, the amount of trauma she would have been experiencing. Like, I mean, like I mean, and I think that's a marker. It's of good horror is like that to me right there is it's so unsettling. The idea of
Yeah.
like that's so much better than jump scare. It's like
Oh,
here's an idea, you have to go and live there, you're stuck there, nobody even knows that you're missing, and you're going to live in that environment basically forever. It's like,
right.
oh,
Yeah.
that's horrifying.
Yeah.
Oh, that's an
It wasn't
unsettling
until she
thought.
got the chance to dance
Right.
that she finally felt like, oh, like
Yeah.
I can do something, and I think that is done really well, and something that I didn't really pick up on while I was watching the film. While I was watching the film, I was like, what is all this about dancing? Like, I don't see what relevance there is to this, and but the idea that all the underground people are watching her. I
Yeah.
think that's really what does it. I don't know if you have other thoughts on that. Um,
I mean, you're right. Like that is what happens within it.
because she says that like that's the point where she
Yes.
started planning, right?
Yes. And where she says, like, doesn't she say, like, that's where she found God?
Right.
Like
Yeah.
she puts it in very strange terms. Like it's
Yeah.
the language she chooses to use there is really interesting. I have not fully worked through the significance of that, of what comes out of that. But
Yeah. Yeah. It's a very interesting moment that I will certainly be paying more attention to on repeat viewings.
yeah,
Um,
yeah,
um, but getting back to Adelaide's parents, um, I think it is worth pointing out that her father is clearly an alcoholic.
yep, yep,
I mean, he's completely drunk
yep,
at the boardwalk there,
yep,
and and I think this does tie into, the concept of, even when you're at whatever level, you're still not going to be at that level. Where he is, where Adelaide is, you know, maybe not appreciating her parents, right? Like she's just
Hmm.
like, oh, I want you to get me that one or whatever. And then for her to be put into this other position where it's like, now I really have nothing and now I better appreciate my parents. I think that there's something there. I mean, there's certainly more to the father being alcoholic than just, oh, that's the excuse for why he lets, Adelaide run off.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, you are right. I'm sure there definitely is something to that. I mean, because I think I like what you're saying. I think I get where you're going with this, that Adelaide is still in a fairly privileged position, even
yeah,
having imperfect parents, and that
yeah,
the mother, like her mother, kind of resents her dad, but at least she has a dad who's in the picture.
yeah,
That he might have an issue with alcohol. But I mean, look, he is there with his daughter. He might not be as attentive as he could be, like he wants to play whack-a-mole and he's kind of paying attention to her, but not really. But I mean, like, that's still more attention than what a lot of kids get from their dad. He's not a deadbeat dad. He's not an absent father. And he doesn't seem to be abusive in any way. He's just somewhat negligent. And and that she's in a privileged position by having that having two parents. I mean, like, that's something that, I mean, really, you're talking about a lot of people don't have that. Like, a lot of people
right.
don't grow up with that. And but yeah, there doesn't seem to be much. um I don't know. I don't know what else to make of it beyond that, other than that is a kind of privilege that she's experiencing, but it's like it's not good enough, though.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. It's very interesting, and I mean, she's obviously experiencing this whole amusement park, and she's winning these she's getting these things, right? Like she gets the
Yeah.
shirt and she already had the candy apple
Yep.
from the start of the film, and as far as I could tell she did not take a single bite of it,
Yeah.
and then she just drops it right into the
Yep.
sand. And I
Yep.
don't know about I I don't know about everybody, but I was certainly looking at that, like we did not come from a wealthy family, and I was
No.
looking at that and I was going, what an absolute waste.
Oh yeah.
like,
Like,
like that
Judith
is just,
beside me audibly gasped when that happened. It was like the most
yeah.
shocking part of the film. It was like, oh, the apple. And I'm like, I know those things are like $5 at a theme
Right.
park, like at minimum. Sometimes they're more
Yeah.
than that. And I
Yeah.
know, and it's like, but she's used to, she seems very accustomed to these things, like to be able, like, or I mean, like even being able to play carnival games. It's like,
Yeah.
and that it was a question of like, do you want me to keep playing and try to get to that level, or are you happy with what's
Yeah.
on that level? I mean, like, that is a
It
kind
wasn't him saying like, I'm sorry, I can't afford, to go to the next
I
level.
know.
No.
Like what she experienced there, like I've never experienced that. Like I never experienced that from our
Right.
parents. It never would have been like, do you want that? It's like we never even would have gotten to the second level. I don't even know if we would
Yeah.
have been able to like have like one play on that.
Right. It would have been okay. You know what? Let's go to the kids' park where they give you a prize no matter what.
That is what we ended up doing. It was that. Yeah. Or it's like,
Doing
okay,
it
you get like
when I was like 15. Like,
exactly. Exactly. I know.
like I'm not going to
Uh,
spend money if I'm not getting anything back. Like,
right.
um,
And it's such an interesting thing because even like the prize that she ends up getting, so she gets this, brand new Michael Jackson Thriller t-shirt, and then you see the distorted version of it in the underground, and it's like
yeah,
that to me made so much sense with my reading of this. I mean, if you're looking at what ends up happening in a lot of parts of the world, then it's like they will wear clothing that is very Western, but it is either defective or it is secondhand. And so so it ends up being like really heavily used by the time they get it. And so like I mean, I've I'm aware enough to know that that will happen, right, that you'll see these outdated t-shirts or these t-shirts that are, just not like they're really, really worn or
Right.
defective in some way. And that it's like, it seems so visible to me, right? It's like, I mean, even
Yeah.
just like, even if you're talking about just even within North America, then I mean, like I know, like growing up, for instance, then Adidas was so popular, and that you would see these people who would have Adidas pants where you've got the 3 white stripes down the sides, and
Yeah.
then it was like that was such a popular thing to do, but that was expensive. And so then like Zellers and other stores, I think Walmart started doing this too, then they put the 4 stripes down the leg whereas
Right.
4 white stripes, because they couldn't put the 3 Adidas stripes because that's
Yeah.
trademarked in some way.
Yeah.
So
Or
they
you
would
could
be
do
like,
two.
you could do two. You could do two, but if you have 4, then it might trick the eye just enough that it
Right. Yeah.
looks like, yeah. I mean, like they have all kinds of brands like that, or like instead of having a polo shirt, then I forget what it was. I think it was like Kmart that had their version where it's like the horse is too big, or it's a donkey, or you know what I mean. He's got a hockey stick instead of a like polo mallet. Like it's a little off, and that's the thing
Yeah.
about the shirt. It's like, well, I want to have that shirt, but I can't have that shirt, so I have some version of it, but it's a really crummy version of it.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. Okay. So I'm curious as to Red brings up this idea of untethering,
Uh-huh.
and and of course she they're all dressed in red and they're holding the shears. I'm curious, what significance you see in any of those three things. Because the untethering, like it, it's an interesting concept and one that I don't know that we really get uh full satisfaction with, where it, it seems like the underground people are, I mean, we're pulling back from the full philosophical here, or the
No, no, that's fine. That's fine.
commentary. But you definitely get, the underground people are doing exactly what the overworlders are doing. And I mean, you have that fantastic scene with the kid, what's his name? Jason, stepping backward,
Yep.
causing Pluto to step back
Yes.
into the fire. That's fantastic. This idea of you can't really break free. Like, it's such a
Right.
struggle that they always fall back into that.
Yeah.
So the idea is like that the untethering hasn't finished, and I'm not sure if untethering is just kill the other, or if it's supposed to be more significant than that. I mean, certainly Red and Adelaide become untethered. Um, but
Yeah.
yeah.
Um, yeah, as far as the literal explanation for it within the film, it is certainly confusing. It seems to be that if you want to untether, you kill the other person,
Mm,
which can do it. Um, but I think, and I'm not trying to like, I hope that this comes out right, but I think this idea of tethering is what kind of mimicking behavior is happening amongst people who are dealing with poverty, who are looking at other people that they identify with who are not dealing with poverty, and then they strive towards those same behaviors at their own peril.
right.
And so, for instance, growing up, like you hear about this happening, and it's to me, it's really tragic. It's heartbreaking when you hear about it happening about like young like teenagers, killing a person in order to get their Jordans,
Mm,
their really
yeah.
expensive running shoes. And it's
Yeah.
like that idea of, well, you're dealing with poverty, but you want, those really expensive running shoes because you see, your favorite athletes who have got those really expensive sneakers, right? To use the
Yeah.
American term, right? That you see these shoes, and you're trying to mimic that behavior but it's so self-destructive because that really shouldn't be your priority. And it's like, and I don't, and I'm not just picking on that one particular issue, right? It's this whole idea of, I mean, I'm not on Instagram, but from what I understand, like there's a lot of like comparison that goes on with Instagram, looking at the way people like look at the lifestyle that I'm living, or like all the people who are like traveling. And it's like, if you don't travel when you're young, then you're wasting your life because and it's just like, you're so privileged if you're able to do that. And then telling somebody that they're wasting their life if they don't do it at a certain age, that they're just not prioritizing correctly, to me is disgusting. It's really disgusting. Don't tell somebody who like maybe just has not been afforded certain privileges that you've been afforded within your life, to mimic your behavior. That it just seems to be that is, to me, the relationship between the tethering and that. But how else do you sever that? How do you separate yourself from that? Because you want to have ambition. You want to strive to get out of poverty, but you don't. But I don't know. I mean, I think it seems like in our world, it's about priorities, right? It's got to be, well, I mean, you probably should invest in your own education and getting a good career, before you try to do all these other things, and pay off your debts before you spend money. Like, don't go into debt in order to have a car that your neighbor has, like making ridiculous car payments. Like, just be responsible, right?
Yeah.
That there's a certain amount of that. Like, stop envying and be comfortable with what you have. That would be untethering, like just not being connected to that other person. But then, I mean, if you follow that through and then you're like looking at what the film is suggesting, then it's like, yeah, but you can't untether, so kill him. Then I'm like, ooh, well, that's uncomfortable. Like, I don't know what is this? Is this Eat the Rich? Like, is this like just kill them?
Yeah, I know. It's a very odd
kill them
approach.
Or eliminate the poor.
I mean, because Red definitely seems to think that there is a way to become untethered, because she doesn't seem to be interested in killing Adelaide.
Well, she does initially say this, that she basically wants to savor it. She wants to really take her time, because the better Adelaide's life was, the worse Red's life became.
Right.
That seemed to be what she was trying to do. She wanted to torture her. She wanted to make her suffer.
Right.
But then the other, like,
okay. So with the other points that I brought up, the red outfits, I think it's really effective in terms of distinguishing the other from the overworlders.
It's a great visual cue.
Yeah, and it's beautifully well executed when you have the Hands Across America, and the image of Hands Across America was these red silhouettes of people holding hands. So I think that's really effective. With the shears, I get that there's this kind of like there is obviously a literal thing of a tether. Do you think that that's what the shears are meant to represent then?
I mean, I have another theory on it, but I hesitate to bring it up. But I am okay. I have two theories.
The only other thing that I'm thinking is the idea of clothing manufacturers. If we are going back to this idea of the underground people being these developing nations, or these producers of things for the the US and other developed nations, right? Then the shears would have some significance in terms of the manufacturing of those clothes.
Yeah, it could really be that. So Okay, one of my theories with it, and you might be right, that might be, and not to say that that's the only interpretive possibility, right? But like that might actually be a really good one. The what I was thinking of is the fates. Do you know what I'm talking about? I think this is from
Yeah,
ancient Greek mythology of like they pull out the thread of your life, and like one of them
yeah,
is like pulling. I think the other, I think there's three women who do this. One of them
yeah.
is like I think spinning it, and then another one is pulling it, and then the third one has got these shears, these scissors, who then decides when to cut, and that's the end of your life. It's determining how long the span of your life will be. And that in that way, then it's like this is like a variation on that of like having the shears, and it's like your time is done. You didn't think that your time was done, but we're gonna make it done. Um,
Right. Yeah.
yeah, I mean like yeah, there's that, and then like I said, I've got another theory that I'm working through with it, and I'm just if I'm wrong, it would sound awful. So I'm just gonna think. I think I'm just gonna hang on to it.
Okay. Yeah. I mean,
I'll tell you off air.
yeah, in all honesty, we might do, another podcast, maybe in the
Yeah,
future.
I know. Like we really could. We really could. Um,
Because yeah, I do think that, the shears could be um, a reference to that clothing manufacturing, or
yeah,
and literally in the film, with the idea of cutting through the tether, right? So that would be the act of untethering.
yeah,
Um, but yeah, I do like that idea of the fates as well. Yeah, there's so much in this film. And as we talk about it, I appreciate the film more and more.
yeah.
As I said,
I'll
like
just
I really feel like this film is a film that's built for discussions.
It is. It is very much like a Kubrick film, right? That you
Mm.
watch a Kubrick film, then it opens up all these different possibilities of what kinds of meaning you can get from it. Uh, I'll just briefly point to this. Jeremiah 11:11 says, "Therefore, thus saith the Lord: Behold, I will bring evil upon them, which they shall not be able to escape, and though they shall cry unto me, I will not hearken unto them." So it's been a while since I've read Jeremiah, but as best I remember in terms of context, I believe that this is God speaking through Jeremiah as a prophet and basically talking about the idea that the Hebrews have forsaken the law so much so that they are going to lose Jerusalem, they're going to lose the temple, and there's going to be the great exile. I could be really
Mhm.
wrong on this, but I think that's what it's pointing to. And basically, they are then going to cry out to God, saying like, "Save us," and He's going to say, "No, because I gave you plenty of warnings, and you were disobedient and disobedient and disobedient, and so your cries for help are going to go unanswered." And I mean, I think yeah, that's basically what the scripture is, and you see that multiple times within the film, and there's all kinds of cues for that, and it seems to be that this family, they're definitely crying out for help, but nobody's
Mhm.
answering, right?
Right.
That
Yeah.
you've got the family throughout the film who is desperate for help, and literally no one helps them. Their cries are just futile, and and I think it's this idea of because you've been doing something wrong for a long time, but you didn't even realize that it was wrong. You're so deep in your own iniquity and sin that you don't even recognize it as iniquity and sin, that you don't realize that you're being lawless, that you're not following. Basically, you're not being your brother's keeper, so to speak. You don't care about
Right.
other people in society, and you're living this life of wealth and privilege while other people are suffering. And since you're not aware of it, you're going to get punished for it, and you're going to say like, "Oh no, why is this happening to me?" And it's just going to be like, "What do you mean? Like, you didn't care. You didn't care for your entire life. These people have been there, and you've ignored them." I think
Right.
that's how it's functioning. I think. Um, I mean, obviously, with all of these things, anybody who's watching this, if you comment, like I would appreciate it. Any kind of commentary on
Yes,
this would be great.
for
If you've got
sure.
ideas that come out of this.
Yeah. I kind of wish that there had been uh I mean, maybe there is, and I just didn't notice it. But in the underground, I wish that there had been, some image of 1111.
Hmm.
because it really does shake Adelaide when, she looks over and sees that the clock
But
says 11,
she's the
11.
one who sees it. Is there anybody else who sees it?
Uh, in terms of when she sees the old man holding it, or
Yeah.
on the clock.
Like visually within the film, are there any other characters who take notice of that?
Mm, I don't think so. No.
Oh, see, so it makes so much sense actually now that I think about it, because this is of course a warning to the Hebrews, to the Israelites, pointing to this idea that you knew what the law was, and
Mm,
now you've forsaken it, you've ignored it, and now you're not following it, and you're gonna pay. That she grew up there. She knows who these people are, but
right.
she's
Mm,
now ignored them. She's turned away from them, and
right.
now she's going to suffer. And she's going to cry out for help, and it's like it's too late. You should have helped however long ago. You knew that all this was going on. You were down there, you grew up in these conditions, you know where to find the place,
Right.
because you were able to get out of there, and you haven't gone back. You haven't returned to what you learned in your youth.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So
No,
that's
that's
why I think it's
that's
not down there, because it wouldn't be down there, right?
right. Yeah. Yeah. No, that makes sense.
Because if you're down there, you're already like, you're okay. But it's like when you
Yeah.
come out of that, that you've forgotten what that is. That's where all the warnings are, right? That it's like going back to the early part of Israel. It's like, well, you're doing okay right now. You're doing okay right now. It's like, wait, you guys are losing it. You're losing it. You're losing it. You're gonna lose the
Yeah.
temple. You're gonna lose
Mhm.
Jerusalem if you keep up like this.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Man, I have so many more things to say.
I
Um,
know. I don't know. Like maybe I feel like we should wrap this up because we've been going for a while. But
yeah. For just a few quick notes.
sure.
One, I love the reference to Alice in Wonderland where she follows the white rabbit down
Yep, she
into the
sure does.
underground.
Yeah.
Um, that's fantastic. Another is, of course, the old man, like the homeless man or whatever, who has the Jeremiah 11:11 sign. Obviously, he dies at the beginning of the film, and then the one that's standing there at the beginning of the film when Jason sees him
Yep.
is the underground version, and he's
Yeah.
waiting for everybody else to
I
hold
know, with
hands
his
with him.
hands
He's like,
out.
yeah, he's the first
Yeah.
one in line. Oh,
Yeah.
uh,
He was a little bit early.
yeah, you're right.
Awkward. What time does this thing start again?
I think I'm here a day early. I don't know.
Right. I guess I'll just wait. I'll stand like this.
Right.
And then he
Nobody else is
disappeared.
gonna be
He realized,
killed
I think he
until
checked his watch. He was like, oh, not quite.
right. Yeah. Um, yeah. Man. Okay. So there are all those things. I would have to see the scene again. But when Adelaide is talking about the trauma that she went through as a child,
Uh-huh.
I don't know that she ever says that that she wandered off from her parents. I think that she says that she was lost or something, and
Yeah.
whatever, she went into the place and there was another girl there, and now
Yep.
she's worried that that other girl is coming for her.
Yep.
I think that because I heard somebody, when I was leaving the theater say, "Oh, that didn't make any sense then," and I'm like, but no, it really did, because I don't think
No.
she said, like,
She wandered into that place
right,
and
yeah,
found another girl in there.
yeah, yeah. So
Yeah, that is a good. Yeah, I'd have to watch that again to see if she does mention anything about her parents, but I imagine that she didn't.
right, yeah, I know that's what I was thinking too, because I was like, oh, that scene does kind of feel awkward, but now, like, I'm like, no, it actually really works, like, even better, because of course she's worried that that girl
Yes.
has been getting closer and
Right.
closer all of this time. So,
Right.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. the other thing too about rabbits, I've been trying to think through the symbolism of that, and the only thing that I've come up with at this point is just that rabbits, of course, are associated with, like multiplying like bunnies, like bunny rabbits, right? And
Yeah.
that is a criticism of not only the developing world with their populations being incredibly high, even though they're dealing with a lot of poverty and people there have many children, but they can't afford to take care of all of those kids necessarily by like North American or Western standards, right? Like Western Europe or North America by those standards. Then it's like we can't have more kids. Like, look at the kind of conditions you're living in, right?
Right.
And then also like amongst poor people within North America, then you get criticisms of, like, oh, look at them, they're that age and they're having a kid, single moms and like all of this stuff, that it's just like the idea of, you're just having kids like crazy, but you can't
Yeah.
take care of them. That to me is the association with rabbits. But to me, it also falls apart because I'm like, oh, but they're duplicates. So what does that mean? But then I'm like, oh, but if you look at the cramped living conditions, right? That it's like inner
Right.
cities or these developing nations, that it's not even just that like there's too many people, it's that there's too many people living too close together. And
Yeah.
that is a thing that should be frowned upon. Like, ooh, who would want to live like that? What's wrong with those people, right? Living
Yeah.
like having multiple people living in a small apartment, right? Then it's like, ew, that's basically child abuse, like that kind of like criticism that exists out
Right.
there. I feel like that was part of the symbolism of the rabbits, but I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah, I know. It's there's so much to examine
Yeah.
and to analyze and to, look through with this film. I, it's fantastic.
Yeah.
And hopefully everybody who's watching this did already watch it.
Yeah. And can
Uh,
comment below and say all the great ideas that you have, other theories that you might have,
yeah, yeah.
questions that you have, because we've obviously posed a bunch of questions.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, for sure. And maybe we'll do a response video one day.
Yeah, like I think that'd be like great to do some kind of response. And also like I would like to see like what other people are saying about the film, including people who comment on this, but then just yeah, see in general,
Yeah.
because I haven't read anything else about what people are getting out of this movie. But yeah, maybe we will do a response at some point.
Yeah. All right. Sounds good.
Okay. Well, thank you so much for watching. And if you liked this, then you can go ahead and watch the Get Out podcast that we did in case you have not watched that and you're interested and you want more of this, because this is pretty similar, not in terms of like where we went with the conversation, but a similar kind of conversation, really getting into Jordan Peele's
Yeah.
first film, Get Out. So, yeah, I hope you liked that. Thanks so much for watching. Bye.
Bye.
Ignore the bell, people. We're gonna keep going. We're still ignoring it. Don't worry. I don't know what that. I think that's the fire drill. All right. We're gonna go home. Yeah. All right. We're done.